The day my savings hit $20,000, I did something that every personal finance expert tells you never to do. I stopped saving. Completely. $0 went into my savings account from that day forward. And that single decision changed everything. Not because 20,000 is some magical number. It is not. In the grand scheme of wealth, 20 grand is barely a starting line. But here is what nobody tells you about that specific number. When you cross it, something shifts inside your brain. Not because of the money itself, because of what the money represents. And if you have ever wondered why some people stay stuck at 5,000, or 10,000, or even 50,000, while others explode past those numbers into real financial freedom, this is the difference. The difference is not discipline. It is not a higher salary. It is not some secret investment strategy. The difference is what you do the moment you stop feeling broke. Think back to your own savings journey for a second. Remember the first time you hit $1,000. That felt huge, right? Like actual progress. Then maybe you hit 5,000. Suddenly you started feeling careful, protective, like you had something to lose. By the time you reached 10,000, a new voice probably showed up in your head. A voice that said, "Do not touch this. Guard it. This is your safety." And that voice is not wrong. But here is where it gets dangerous. That same voice that protects you from spending also protects you from growing. It turns your savings into a museum piece, something to look at but never use, something to preserve instead of leverage. And most people never notice this shift happening. They just feel increasingly anxious about losing what they have built. So they save more. They cut more expenses. They say no to more experiences. They become excellent at protecting $10,000 while accidentally guaranteeing they will never reach $100,000. I was stuck in that exact trap at $15,000. I remember checking my bank account every single day, sometimes 3 times a day, watching the number crawl upward, feeling proud but also terrified. One medical bill, one car repair, one emergency plane ticket, and poof, back to zero. So I did what everyone does. I tightened the belt even more. No eating out, no subscriptions, no new clothes. I turned my life into a game of avoiding any possible expense. And you know what happened? I hit 20,000, and I felt nothing. No excitement, no relief, just more fear. Because now I had even more to lose. That is the trap. That is the silent killer of wealth. The belief that saving is the same as building wealth. It is not. Saving is just delaying spending. Real wealth requires a completely different move. One that feels wrong. One that feels dangerous. One that every broke person will tell you is crazy. But here is what I realized the day I hit 20,000. That number was never going to grow if I kept treating it like a fragile egg. So I did the thing that changed everything. I spent it. Not on a vacation. Not on a car. Not on anything that loses value the second you buy it. I spent it on something that terrified me. Something that had a real chance of failing. Something that my broke brain screamed was irresponsible. But here's the question I want you to sit with before I tell you exactly what I did. What would you do with $20,000 if you were not allowed to save it? If someone said you must use this money in the next 30 days to change your financial future, and you cannot just put it in a bank account, what would you do? Most people cannot answer that question, and that is exactly the problem. Because saving is easy. Saving is comfortable. Saving feels productive, while actually keeping you exactly where you are. The real wealth move is terrifying, and that is why almost nobody makes it. I spent $19,000 on a single piece of paper. Not a degree, not a certificate, a contract. A contract that gave me the rights to a small, failing storage unit business 2 towns over from where I lived. $19,000 for a business that made maybe $800 a month before expenses. After expenses, the previous owner was pocketing maybe $400. For context, that is less than minimum wage. The place was ugly. Chain link fence with rust spots, gravel lot full of weeds. The office was a converted shipping container with a space heater and a broken window. The previous owner was an older guy who just wanted out. He had inherited it from his brother and hated running it. And I bought it. For $19,000, my entire savings. Everything I had worked for over 3 years of skipping restaurants, driving a car with no air conditioning, and saying no to every friend who wanted to go out. I put it all into a business that smart people would call a liability. The day I signed that contract, I felt physical nausea. Not metaphorically. Actual stomach-churning sickness. I sat in my car in the gravel lot for 20 minutes just breathing. Because every voice in my head was screaming that I had just made a mistake. that I should have kept saving, that I should have put the money in an index fund like the YouTube videos said, that I should have done anything other than buy a failing storage unit business in a town nobody visits. But here is what I understood that most people do not. Wealth is not built by collecting money. Wealth is built by owning things that make money. And $20,000 in a savings account makes you nothing. Actually less than nothing, because inflation slowly eats it while you sleep. $20,000 in an index fund might make you $1,000 a year if you are lucky. That is not wealth. That is just slow-motion poverty. What I needed was an asset, something that produced cash flow every single month regardless of whether I worked or not. Something that could grow beyond what my salary could ever provide. And a storage unit business, even a failing one, had something that most investments do not. It had pricing power. It had low maintenance costs. It had customers who paid every month like clockwork, because where else are they going to put their stuff? The previous owner was failing because he was lazy. He never raised prices in 7 years. He never fixed the fence. He never advertised. He just collected the same $400 a month and complained about how the business was dying. But dying businesses are often just sleeping businesses. And sleeping businesses are exactly what you want to buy, because you can wake them up. I spent the next 90 days living on ramen and rice while I turned that place around. I raised prices by 15%. Not one customer left, because moving a storage unit costs time and energy that most people will pay to avoid. I fixed the fence myself with $200 in materials and a weekend of sweat. I put up a simple sign on the main road. I listed the units on Neighbor and Sparefoot. Within 6 months, that business was making $2,000 a month in profit. Not revenue, profit, after all expenses, which meant my $19,000 investment was paying me back in less than 10 months. And after that, every dollar was mine, every single month, while I slept, while I worked my day job, while I did nothing. That is the difference between saving and building. But here's where most people get lost. They hear this story and they think, well, I cannot buy a business. I do not have enough money. I do not know how. And that is exactly the trap. You are waiting for permission. You are waiting for the perfect amount. You are waiting until you feel ready, and you will wait forever. Because readiness does not come from a bank account. Readiness comes from deciding that you will no longer trade your time for money, that you will no longer save your way to freedom, because saving is just a slower way of staying stuck. Let me ask you something uncomfortable. How much money did you save last year? Really saved, not invested, not used to buy anything productive, just sitting in a bank account earning less than the rate of inflation. Now multiply that number by 10 years. What do you have? A slightly larger pile of cash that is actually worth less in buying power than when you started. That is the hidden tax on safety. The more you save, the more you lose. Not overnight, not in a way you would notice month to month, but slowly, steadily, silently. Meanwhile, the people who take their $20,000 and buy something that works for them, they are not losing. They are multiplying. Not because they are smarter, not because they are luckier, because they understand a simple truth that most adults never learn. Money is not meant to be kept. Money is meant to be converted into assets. Assets that produce more money, which you then convert into more assets. That is the engine of wealth. Not saving, not budgeting, not coupon clipping. Conversion. Think of it like this. Saving is like filling a bathtub with the drain open. You work hard. You pour water in. But inflation, emergencies, unexpected expenses, they are all draining water out the whole time. You can pour faster. You can work more hours. You can cut more expenses. But as long as the drain is open, you are fighting a losing battle. Converting your money into an asset is like plugging that drain and then attaching a hose that adds water automatically. The storage unit business was my hose. Every month, $2,000 of new water flowing into my tub without me lifting a finger. That is what $20,000 bought me. Not a number on a screen, a machine that printed money while I lived my life. Now here is the part that scares people, the part that makes them nod along with this video and then do absolutely nothing different. Taking action means risking the money. It means you might lose. It means you might buy the wrong business, or invest in the wrong thing, or make a mistake that costs you thousands of dollars. And that possibility is terrifying. I know because I lived it. That day in the gravel lot, I was not confident. I was not sure. I was scared. I was shaking. I was questioning every decision that had led me to that moment. But here is what I have learned since then. The pain of regret is far worse than the pain of failure. Failing at something means you tried, you learned, you got back up. Regret means you never even started. You spend the rest of your life wondering what if. And I promise you, wondering what if is a heavier weight than losing every dollar you saved. Because here is the secret that wealthy people know and broke people never understand. You can always make more money. You cannot make more time. Saving $20,000 took me 3 years. 3 years of my life. 3 years of saying no. 3 years of watching my friends travel and eat out and live, while I stayed home to protect a number in an app. That time is gone forever. I will never get it back. But that $19,000 investment turned those 3 years of sacrifice into a lifetime of monthly income. It honored my past effort instead of just storing it. That is what you are missing if all you do is save. You are not honoring your effort. You are just delaying your consumption. And delaying is not the same as building. Most people save for a future that never comes. They save for a house they never buy. They save for retirement they never reach with enough. They save for an emergency that somehow never feels small enough to use the savings on. And they die with a bank account full of dollars that they never converted into a life. Do not let that be you. The day you hit 20,000, or 10,000, or even 5,000, that is not the day to save harder. That is the day to convert. That is the day to take your past sacrifice and turn it into a future machine. That is the day everything changes. If you are brave enough to stop saving and start buying. 6 months after I bought that storage unit business, I had my $20,000 back. Not from saving, from the profit the business generated. And I still own the business, which meant month 7, month 8, month 9, all new money. Money I never had before. Money that came from nowhere except a decision I made on a terrifying Tuesday afternoon. That is the flywheel. That is the mechanism that separates people who die rich from people who die trying. Once you have one asset producing cash, you use that cash to buy another asset. Then 2 assets produce cash. Then you buy a third. And slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, your life changes. Not because you got a raise, not because you worked harder, because you stopped being a worker and started being an owner. I want you to look at your savings account right now. Whatever number is in there, small or large, that number is not your wealth. That number is your raw material. It is clay. It is wood. It is steel. It is nothing until you shape it into something that works. $20,000 in a bank account is just a number. $20,000 turned into a small business, or a rental property, or a website that sells something, or even a vending machine route, that is a tool. And tools build things. Numbers just sit there. The most important financial decision you will ever make is not how much to save, it is what to do with what you have saved. And most people, most smart, hardworking, disciplined people, make the wrong decision. They save, they protect, they wait, and they wonder why nothing ever changes. Let me give you one more analogy before I tell you the single biggest lesson I learned from that whole experience. Imagine 2 farmers. One farmer spends all year gathering seeds. He collects thousands of seeds. He stores them in a barn. He protects them from weather and pests and thieves. He feels rich because he has so many seeds. The second farmer takes his seeds and plants them. Some rot, some get eaten by birds, some fail to grow, but the ones that survive become stalks of wheat. Each stalk produces hundreds of new seeds. By the end of the year, the second farmer has more seeds than the first farmer could ever dream of. Not because he saved, because he planted. Your savings are seeds, and a bank account is just a barn. A barn does not grow anything. A barn just stores. And storing is not the same as growing. The day my savings hit $20,000, I stopped being a saver and started being a planter. That was the shift. That was everything. And here is what I want you to take away from this entire story. The number does not matter. 20,000, 10,000, 5,000, even 1,000. What matters is your willingness to convert that number into something that produces. Because until you do, you are just a temporary holder of money. You are a warehouse. And warehouses do not get rich. Owners get rich. Planters get rich. Builders get rich. The day you stop saving and start converting is the day your financial life actually begins. Everything before that was just practice. So here is my question for you. What are you going to do the day your savings hit whatever number you are waiting for? Are you going to keep saving, or are you finally going to start building? Because those are the only 2 options, and only one of them changes everything.